A very blessed Good Friday as we gather together today, as we look at what Christ went through, as we walk through his road before Pilate, before the government, but knowing that all of this took place so it might be good for us, that our sins might be accounted for. When they had bound Jesus, they led him from Caiaphas to the hall of judgment and gave him over to Pontius Pilate, the governor. It was early. They themselves did not go over into the judgment hall, so they might not be defiled, but might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out to them and said, "What charge do you bring against this man?" They answered and said to him, "If he were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you." Then Pilate said to them, "Take him then, and judge him according to your law." The Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put any man to death." So the word of Jesus was fulfilled, signifying by what kind of death he would die. The charges they brought against him were, "We found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding us to pay taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king." Then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered him, "Do you say this yourself, or did others say to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Do you take me for a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have given you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would have fought that I should not be given over to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not in the ways of this place." Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" Jesus answered, "You say rightly that I am a king. I was born, and I came into the world that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone that is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no fault in this man." The chief priests kept laying one charge after another against him, but Jesus answered not a word. Pilate questioned him, saying, "Do you answer nothing? See how many charges they lay against you." Jesus answered him not a word. Pilate was utterly amazed. He said to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no case against this man." They pressed their charges more vehemently. "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, beginning from Galilee to this place." When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked whether or not this man was a Galilean. When he heard they belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him on to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem for those days. When Herod saw Jesus, he was delighted, for he had long wished to see him because of what he had heard of him, and he hoped to see him do a miracle. He questioned Jesus repeatedly, but he gave him no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood there, vehemently accusing him. Herod and his soldiers mocked him. They put on him a splendid robe and sent him back to Pilate. Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that same day, for before this, they had been at enmity with one another. Pilate then called the chief priests and the rulers of the people and said to them, "You have brought this man before me as one subverting the people. See now, I have examined him before you, and have found nothing in this man guilty of any of your charges against him, and neither did Herod, for he sent him back to me. Mark this, he has done nothing worthy of death. I'll have him punished and release him." Now, at the feast, it was the governor's custom to release to the crowd any one prisoner for whom they asked for. They had then a notorious prisoner named Barabbas. He was in prison with the rebels who had committed murder in the uprising in the city. Pilate knew that it was out of malice that the chief priests handed Jesus over. Therefore, he said to them, "Do you want me to release for you Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" The chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to destroy Jesus. Pilate asked them again, "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" And they cried out all together, saying, "Away with this man! Release for us Barabbas!" And Pilate was sitting in the judgment seat. His wife sent him a message: "Do not have anything to do with that man. I have suffered much over him today in a dream." Again, Pilate addressed them, for he wished to release Jesus. He said to them, "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called Christ? What shall I do with him whom you call the King of the Jews?" And they all cried out, "Crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found no guilt worthy of death in him. I'll therefore punish him and let him go." They cried out all the louder, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers of the governor led him away into the praetorium. They gathered the whole band of soldiers around him. They stripped him, put on a purple robe. When they had woven a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and a reed in his right hand. And they knelt before him, mocking him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. They knelt down and did him homage. Pilate went out again and said to them, "See, I bring him out to you, that you may know that I find him not guilty." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." When the chief priests and officers saw him, they cried, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I do not find him guilty." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and by that law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was more afraid and went again into the judgment hall and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" Jesus gave him no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have the power to crucify you and I have the power to release you?" Jesus answered, "You would not have any power at all over me unless it had been given to you from above. For that reason, he who handed me over to you has the greater sin." This prompted Pilate to go on trying to release him. But the Jews cried out, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Everyone who makes himself a king sets himself against Caesar." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out, sat down in the judgment seat, in a place that is called the pavement, or in Hebrew, Gabbatha. It was the preparation of the Passover about the 6th hour. He said to the Jews, "Behold, your king." They cried, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate said unto them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priest answered, "We have no king but Caesar." And Pilate saw he was getting nowhere, but rather a riot was underway. He took water, washed his hands before the crowd, and said, "I am innocent of the blood of this man. See to it yourselves. Then all the people responded, his blood be on us and on our children. Then Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, gave sentence that should be as they demanded. He released to them Barabbas, for whom they asked, the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder. He had Jesus flogged, then gave him over to their will to be crucified. Soldiers mocked him, stripped him of the purple robe, put his own clothes on him, and led him out to crucify him. This